Hello, everyone. I am Laura Toner Haddock. I'm the co-producing artistic director at Austin Playhouse, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this our very first Postcards from Austin. I'm gonna fix my volume there. I've done this before. So with me is Sarah Fleming Walker, who's the creator of our Postcards from Austin series. Sarah is an acting company member, an artist involved many varied awesome endeavors around town. And earlier in the pandemic, we were talking about the type of programming that we'd really like to bring, and highlighting a lot of Austin's artistic community, how they're reacting to these times, and especially focusing on the diversity of the community. And so this project is still evolving. It's still really taking shape. The first one out of the gate is a familiar face to a lot of Austin Playhouse audiences, and it features an interview that Sarah did with Bernadette Nason. But later, there are going to be a lot of new voices, and it's an artist-led initiative is what we're calling it. So there's going to be a lot of artists creating their own pieces. Some of them will have more of a dramatic narrative arc, and then some of them, like this one, will be a little more behind the scenes documentary interview style. So Sarah, did you want to talk about this at all, and the process of creating it before we kick off? And we'll show this piece, which is about 13 minutes long, this first one.
Yes, I would love to talk about it. For me, it's been such a wonderful way to delve deeper into the interests of mine, photography and film, and just this yearning I've had to create something that promotes connection between people, and just kind of leaning into that grief that we all feel at being disconnected right now and not being able to be together. So my goal with these postcards that I'm creating is to kind of travel around Austin and send out a postcard, if you will, from different areas and from very different voices, and just kind of help us all feel each other a little bit more and know more about what we're all doing right now.
Thank you. That's I know early on we kind of we didn't struggle, but it was such a broad description of what this project was going to be. And finally we decided, we're just going to jump in and it'll find itself. Earlier today, Sarah used the analogy of the sculptor working with stone, and eventually the sculpture reveals itself. So this is just one. This is our first glimpse at a postcard, and these are meant to be just these kind of little slice of life pieces. So that's all I'm going to say from that. And now we're all going to watch it together. So hold on just a second. This process sends the screen dark for just a minute, and then we will all, the lights will come up on our first postcard from Austin. Thank you.
It's so funny. We were sitting here like this just a short while ago, just a week ago or whatever it was. And when all of a sudden cameras are set up around you, and I think, I'm not going to be able to think of anything to say. Yeah, and I will, because I can't stop talking. Now on Zoom, don't seem to have any control whatever. I just, it all just, wow. It's like the combination between terror from meeting someone and a phone call, the two things that frighten me most in my life. Oh, they can see me.
It's like the social anxiety manifests.
Yeah.
Obviously, you weren't born here. We can, kind of skip ahead to
Right.
you're in America. Now what?
I'm in America. I arrived in 92 and then came back for good in 93. And 94, I had a really awful Christmas. And I thought I need to do something over the Christmas period. And I saw that there were auditions for a Christmas Carol at Austin Playhouse. And so I went for the auditions, and much to my surprise, because I was very new as an actress and very new to Austin, I was brought into the cast, and I played Mrs. Fezziwig and an old char lady called Mrs. Tugwell, Tugboat, I can't remember, and various singing party goers and carol singers. And I had the best time ever. And it took a few years, but then eventually I started getting cast again. And then in 2002, I think, I became a company member. And that was one of the happiest times of my life. And I have been with them ever since. So that's what, 25, more than 25 years, 28 years. No, 18 years. I'm really bad at I'm usually quite good at arithmetic. As you know, I was on my way to the Tejas Storytelling Festival to perform on the very day that the governor closed things down in Texas, which is Friday, the 13th of March, and just turned around and came back. So a 4-hour drive, never actually made it to the festival. And that was incredibly depressing. But then I do think that the only way that you can look at something like this is there an opportunity there somewhere? And I tend to be one of those sort of Pollyanna types. I have a very negative way of looking at things sometimes because I've got that good old British, well, it's raining. But on the other hand, there is the side of me that always says, well, what can I do? How can I improve this situation?
The beginning of the lockdown was abrupt.
And all that prep was also working up a story to tell and rehearsing it and making sure it was exactly right for the festival. And I mean, that in itself was a week to 2 beforehand.
Now, do you write your stories down or do you make bullet points and then kind of riff on it until it's just right? How do you
well,
work?
It's interesting you would ask that because it's different for most of my media. When I work up a story for children, I usually rewrite it or adapt it for myself, and then I will put it in my head but not memorize it, and then I will talk to the sofa. I will stand in my living room and talk to the sofa as if it was a bunch of children. And I will just see what I can remember of it and see what direction I go in. I'm not going to change the story fundamentally, but see what interaction I can get from my naked sofa. And I just get ideas. And then I have to find test audiences. And so I will take it into a school or a library and perform it for free so that I can get a feel for what people like and what they don't like. And then it just takes shape somehow. But when it comes to a personal story, it's usually when I'm sitting with friends with a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, and I just tell it. And if people laugh, I think, aha, I have a story. And if nobody laughs, I think, maybe not this one. The best ones are the ones where they laugh and they cry and they laugh and they cry. And then I think, yes, I've got it. And other times people just say, what about when you did such and such? Tell me that. Just tell me that story again. And I'll think, okay, well, someone thought something was worth repeating. So I'll tell it again. And then at some point, I will write it down. And when I write it down, I try not to set it in stone. At that point, I can often fill it out a little bit and say, okay, what was the weather like that day? What was I wearing? What country was I? Blah, 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 that sort of thing.
Do you have anyone you go to for feedback for these very personal?
Well, my poor dear husband easier to go with that. He gets everything. He hears everything. He reads everything. And then I have certain friends that I go to, and or I might send them an email and say, I've just written this one down. What do you think of this? But in general, it's my own family's not very good for that. My own English family is not very good for that, because they don't remember much of what I remember. And if they do, they don't remember it the same way. I can usually hear the voice of my brother saying, that's not how it happened. And my sister saying, I don't remember that at all. Are you sure? And I think, oh, it's written in my journal. I think it happened. And that's another thing. I have journals and letters and photographs. So often I actually have evidence to show that I didn't make it up. Or at least if I made it up, I made it up for my journal and my letters and my photographs.
Your storytelling is so clear, whether I hear you verbally retelling a story or whether I read excerpts. And I really love how you're able to bring in, your wit and really go point for point. I just always feel like I'm there when you're describing
that's
something.
The best compliment I can ever have, that feeling as if you're there. Someone once said that, I'm kind of quoting her, so I feel safe saying this. She said it's like watching a movie. You actually get the pictures in your head, and I'm always hoping for that, but you don't always know how you go across. I'm not a sciencey person. I'm very interested in science. I find it fascinating, and I love documentaries about it, but I don't really have a sciencey brain. And I can remember doing a mock exam for biology, and my biology teacher saying, this is beautifully written, Bernadette, and there's not a single fact in it. And she said, I want less prose and more facts. Please redo this homework and give me 12 important facts or something like that. So there's definitely that element to it. And when I took one of my major exams, and it was a geography exam, I couldn't answer anything on my own syllabus. So I went to a syllabus that we hadn't studied, and there was a question about the Rocky Mountains. And I had never been to the Rocky Mountains. And I wrote 3 full pages. I failed the exam. But I did have this wonderful piece about the Rocky Mountains, and it began, they are very rocky.
It's that you're drawn to what connects things.
Yes.
And what's possible in relationship, rather than,
Yes, this is how an
Step
oxbow lake forms. That was the one that I remember. That I was very interested in the whole concept of oxbow lakes. I loved the rivers. I loved the sediment and everything. And then they started discussing the actual mathematical equations. And then I would just blank out. And then I would picture myself in a deck chair with a book and a cocktail by the side of the oxbow lake. And I'll describe it to you from there. So I'm interested in the story that goes with things. I don't like to be bored. I like adventures. I like to be traveling. I like to be out and about. And for a shy person, I am extraordinarily drawn to people. As I get older, I think that there's nothing wrong with being bored, that I think that one should just sit still and do nothing, much more than people do. And I'm a little bit sorry that I've allowed my life to get like this, that I think I've got to have a list of things to do, in fact, lists of things to do comes into Stealing Baby Jesus a lot, because I always feel like I have to be doing something. And sometimes it's fine just to sit there and be. And I'm learning this as I get older. And I do think that's part of the journey for me. I love new cultures. I love meeting people that aren't the same as me. I don't care what religion they are. I don't care what they look like. I just find that it's going to be very corny here. We have more in common than we have difference. I think it's actually how we are in our hearts, at our roots. I think we're looking for what we have in common rather than what's different.
Well, I mean, I wish you the best with your book.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to buy a copy of my own.
It's actually really exciting because I didn't think that I would ever finish this particular book. So it's especially exciting.
It's like a surprise every time you look at it. Look what
well,
I did.
Well, if you'd told me in April that I would actually finish it and have published it and have a copy of it, now I would have gone, oh, no way. Particularly on the days where I looked at it and thought, oh, I've got nothing to say. But nobody could be more surprised than I am. And so I'm pretty over the moon right now. What's the phrase? I'm chuffed to bits. I'm kicking up my heels. I'm happy as a pig in swill. I love that phrase.
And that is also delicious in its own way.
Delicious swill. We like that, like English cooking.
All right. Thank you again for joining us for the premiere of our Postcards from Austin series. With me, I'm Laura Toner Haddock. With me is Sarah Fleming Walker, the series creator and director of that. And I want to talk just really briefly about some of the troubles of filming anything at this time. Because I know the piece that we've ended up with feels kind of like this simple, natural conversation. But actually, there were originally 2 cameras involved, and the distance that you have to be from Bernadette to safely conduct an interview in these times. And so the mics, hi Mary, hi Cindy, thanks for joining us. There were some technical issues with the footage when you first brought it in. Do you want to talk about, not a lot, just a little bit?
No, I was actually enjoying watching after having some space from it, from working on it. It was actually enjoying like the pandemic rookie filmmaker kind of qualities that I was seeing and hearing, because I'm unafraid of these things. They are what they are. But I thought it was charming how she had her mask in her lap, and how she had to put her lavalier mic on herself because I couldn't go over and help her with that. And so, the cord's hanging out, and we had to switch mics at one point because the lavalier mics were not on their best behavior that day. And I'm not a sound tech. I didn't have one with me. But we did the best we could, and we cleaned it up the best we could. Some of the footage didn't make it, unfortunately, because yes, the boom mic on the second camera was, it picked up all of the ambient noises, which in Bernadette's front yard, it was, I believe she said they were blue jays, which make an extraordinarily piercing sound. And then there was like a drill across the street. For the second interview that I will be coming out after the holidays, there's an issues with many, many, many cars going by that I just, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I should have done backyard talks. But moving forward, you live and you learn, and yeah.
Yeah, no, it's when we were looking at the footage and figuring out what worked, and there's just these beautiful things about writing and what that means. And so we made you a transcription of that interview, but figuring out how to just get these kind of simple things that we took for granted a little bit in the before times together. But I love this conversation. And I love what you've captured, and I think it's a great kickoff to the series, and this kind of putting the artistic process, and this was focused on storytelling at the center of it. Tell me a little about what's the next one coming up after the holidays.
Sure. So at the same day, we took our cameras and hopped house to house. So this person lives next door to me, and I have found everybody in there's, I believe, 3 generations living in this house. They come and go, but they're all caring for their great grandmother, who is 100, I believe, 9900. And it is well, her name is Bertha Means, and then her grandchildren and daughter, they all kind of have different last names. But I interviewed Inonge Kabele, who is the sister of Kotso Kabele, who recently passed away, and he's the founder of the Headwaters School in Austin, which is it's a private school in the downtown area. And she is incredibly fascinating. She was originally born in Zambia, moved to Nigeria, and she speaks about her brother and the business that they made together before he passed. And she speaks about life as a transplanted Black person coming from Africa to America and what that was like for her. And we did that in her front yard. And so, yes, again, picking out the footage, but I was going through the raw footage recently, and I was very pleased that the lavalier mics at least were behaving. So that's one hurdle I don't have to fight.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Sarah, for creating this, and thanks to Bernadette for being our first postcard. And I'm looking forward to seeing where the series goes. So that's all we have right now. And the postcard we'll probably keep this interview up for a little bit and then replace it with just the full postcard standalone on our YouTube page, and a link will also be available on our website. We're Austin Playhouse. We're running A Christmas Carol right now, which also stars Bernadette. And as she mentioned, there a lot of the Bernadette has a new book out called Stealing Baby Jesus, which is full of really fun stories about her misadventures through Christmas times past, and it's available at Amazon.com and Book People in town. So if you know and love Bernadette's storytelling or would like to get introduced to it, it's great, and there's still time to get it before.
It's a great holiday gift. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah, and I will see you soon.
Thank you, Laura. I appreciate everything.
Thanks.